Before you scroll, before you blink, imagine this: a packed theater holding its breath, bright lights burning like judgment itself, and a single moment so shocking that even Simon Cowell forgets to speak. Stay until the end of this story, because what happens in the final seconds changes everything. And if stories of hidden talent, brotherhood, and impossible dreams move you even a little, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss stories like this again. No one noticed them when they first walked in. Three ordinary Filipino boys, barely out of their teens, standing nervously at the edge of the world's biggest stage. Their clothes were simple, not styled by designers. Their shoes were worn from long walks, not red carpets. They looked like thousands of other hopefuls who had come and gone, chasing a dream that usually ended with polite applause and a quiet walk back home. The audience whispered. Some smiled kindly, others checked their phones. Simon Cowell leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, eyes sharp but uninterested. He had seen this story before, or so he thought. Their names were Miguel, Aaron, and Luis. They grew up in the same narrow street in a small Filipino town where roofs leaked during monsoon rains and music was often louder than money. Miguel was the oldest, the unofficial leader, who had dropped out of school to help his mother sell vegetables after his father passed away. Aaron was quiet, painfully shy, raised by a grandmother who believed music was the only thing that kept his heart from breaking. Luis was the youngest, full of jokes and smiles, hiding the fear that he might never be good enough at anything to matter. Music was the one thing that made them feel equal to the world. They practiced wherever they could, on rooftops under the stars, in empty basketball courts, sometimes even beside the road while jeepneys roared past. They shared one cracked speaker, a second-hand microphone, and dreams that felt too big for their circumstances. People told them singing wouldn't pay the bills. People laughed when they talked about international stages. But every night, when the town grew quiet, their voices blended into something that felt like hope. Getting to the audition was a miracle on its own. They sold old belongings, borrowed money they didn't know how they'd repay, and endured long bus rides filled with doubt. More than once, Miguel thought about turning back. Aaron almost froze with fear at the audition doors. Luis joked to hide his shaking hands. But when they stood together, shoulder to shoulder, something stronger than fear held them in place. The host asked them why they were there. Miguel spoke honestly. He said they were there for their families, for their town, and for every kid who was told their dream was impossible. The audience clapped politely. Simon raised an eyebrow. It was time to sing. The first note changed the room. It wasn't loud. It wasn't flashy. It was pure. Their harmonies locked together so perfectly it felt like one soul speaking through three voices. The crowd slowly leaned forward. Whispers stopped. Phones lowered. Aaron's voice trembled at first, then grew strong, carrying years of quiet pain. Miguel's tone was steady and warm, like a promise. Luis lifted the melody higher than anyone expected, his youthful voice cutting through the air with emotion that made hearts ache. Halfway through the song, something shifted. The lyrics spoke of struggle, of empty pockets and full hearts, of dreaming when survival alone felt like a victory. People in the audience began to cry, not loudly, but with hands over mouths, eyes shining. Simon Cowell sat up straighter. His arms uncrossed. His expression changed from skepticism to focus, then to disbelief. As the final chorus rose, the boys closed their eyes, singing not for judges, not for cameras, but for every night they had sung under broken streetlights. The last note hung in the air, fragile and brave. Silence followed. Not the awkward kind, but the stunned kind. The kind that happens when something real has just touched everyone in the room. Then the theater exploded. The audience jumped to their feet, cheering, screaming, clapping until their hands hurt. Miguel's knees nearly gave out. Aaron covered his face, overwhelmed. Luis laughed and cried at the same time. They held onto each other like they might float away if they didn't. Simon Cowell didn't speak right away. He looked at them for a long moment, as if searching for words he rarely needed. When he finally leaned forward, his voice was quieter than expected. He said he had judged thousands of acts, heard countless voices, but what they had just done wasn't about perfection, it was about truth. He admitted he hadn't expected much when they walked out. The crowd gasped. Then he smiled and said that was what made it unforgettable. Each judge praised them, but Simon's reaction was the one people would talk about. He called their performance jaw-dropping, not because it was flawless, but because it was honest. He said they reminded the world why music exists in the first place. Backstage, the boys hugged their families through tears. Miguel thought of his mother watching from home, probably crying beside the vegetable stall. Aaron thought of his grandmother, praying quietly somewhere far away. Luis thought of every joke he'd told to hide his fear, and how, for the first time, he didn't need to hide anymore. Their journey didn't suddenly become easy. Fame brought pressure, criticism, and moments where they doubted themselves all over again. But now, when those moments came, they remembered that first note, that silence, that reaction. They remembered that three ordinary boys from a forgotten street had stood on a world stage and been heard, and that is the real miracle. So if you're watching this with a dream you've been afraid to chase, remember them. Remember that ordinary doesn't mean powerless. Sometimes, it means honest. Sometimes, it means unstoppable. If this story moved you, tap like, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel, because the next story might remind you that your moment is closer than you think.